Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Imam Abu Hanifa Rahimahullah had more students than a person can actually count. Some of them were exceptionally famous. Some of them were not quite as famous as others. And some didn't quite reach that level of fame to be recorded as being amongst that gathering of top students that were produced by Imam Abu Hanifa Rahimahullah. One student that reached a high level of fame, albeit not as famous as those like Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad Rahimahumullah, was Imam Al-Hasan Ibn Ziyaad Al-Lu'lu'i Rahimahullah. If Imam Abu Hanifa Rahimahullah was the sun, then Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad were like the moon, and ulama like Imam Hasan Ibn Ziyaad were like the stars. Imam Hasan Ibn Ziyaad Rahimahullah was born in Kufa. The exact date of his birth is not known, but it was definitely well before the year 150 after Hijrah, because he had studied under Imam Abu Hanifa Rahimahullah, and Imam Abu Hanifa passed away in the year 150 after Hijrah. So it would be safe to say that he was closer in age to Imam Muhammad Rahimahullah, most probably though he was a little bit older, yet younger than Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Zufar Rahimahumullah. The fact that Imam Hassan Rahimahullah was not on the same level as the Sahibain, Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad, should never mislead a person into thinking that he was somehow lacking in some way, because that would be a major mistake to do so. Sahibain themselves were not on the same level as Imam Abu Hanifa Rahimahullah, and yet we know how great they are. Now coming back to Imam Hasan Ibn Ziyaad Rahimahullah, perhaps the simplest way to explain just how great he was would be to say that some of the ulama listed him as the mujadid of his time. Now if you know what a mujadid is, then you know how highly he is regarded. The term mujadid comes from a hadith wherein Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that every century Allah will raise for the ummah a mujadid that will revive and revitalize the deen for the people. Now Imam Hasan ibn Ziyaad rahimahullah lived up until the year 204 after Hijrah. So he was into the 2nd century. So therefore the ulama had put him as being the mujadid of that century. Knowing how lofty this position is, to be even thought of as being a possible candidate for that title is enough of a praise, but to be actually considered as being the mujadid, that is not something small in any way or form whatsoever. Imam Hassan rahimahullah was a faqih, and he busied himself with all the matters relating to fiqh, because fiqh is the understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah. This is why Imam Hassan Rahimahullah used to say that he had written down 12,000 ahadith from Imam Ibn Jurayj Rahimahullah. Each one of those ahadith were necessary for a faqih to know. Imam Hassan Rahimahullah had a great love for and obedience to the ahadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. As a result, he was well known for dressing his slaves in exactly the same clothing and same manner that he used to dress himself. And he was not from a poor family, because they were pearl merchants, hence the title of Lu'lu'i. After Imam Abu Hanifa Rahimahullah passed away, Imam Hasan Ibn Ziyaad Rahimahullah became a student of both Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Zufar Rahimahumullah, furthering his studies under them. Even after completing his studies, it remained the habit of Imam Hasan Rahimahullah to continuously ask questions to his teachers, because that is how he would grow in his knowledge. Imam Abu Yusuf Rahimahullah used to sit and answer questions. Imam Hassan and other students used to be present. And for every question that someone would ask, Imam Hassan Rahimahullah would ask one as well. So you could basically say that half the questions in those classes used to come from Imam Hassan Rahimahullah. These ulama used to learn by asking questions, because both the question and the answer that followed it were treasure chests of knowledge that in the hands of a faqih is a lot deeper than just the words that were said in reply. Imam Hassan Rahimahullah was known as being both very handsome and being exceptionally well-mannered too. And the passion with which he served the deen and the scruples that he had while doing so is even more admirable. It is mentioned that on one occasion a person asked Imam Hassan Rahimahullah a question, to which he responded, and the person left. But after the person left, Imam Hassan Rahimahullah was turning around the question and the answer in his mind, and he realized that the answer he had given wasn't entirely correct. But what could he do? The questioner had already left, and it's not like he left a calling card for him to be able to contact the person. So what Imam Hasan Rahimahullah did, and this shows his absolute honesty and humility. Imam Hasan Rahimahullah hired a caller to make an announcement in the town that whoever had asked Imam Hasan a question on such a day at this particular time should return to him asking this particular question, because Imam Hasan Rahimahullah had erred in his answer. Imam Hasan didn't think of his nafs and worry about saving face, as people would put it today. Maybe just call the person back without publicizing the reason for it, which people today would say is justifiable. But the loyalty of Imam Hasan Ibn Ziyaad Rahimahullah was to the deen and to nothing else. So he had the scholar announce publicly that he had erred. So when this man that had asked the question was eventually found, he returned to Imam Hasan, and Imam Hasan Rahimahullah now explained the matter to him properly, rectifying the issue in this manner. Imam Hasan Ibn Ziyaad Rahimahullah authored a number of kitabs, and he was widely accepted to the point that he was appointed as the Qadi of the city of Kufa in the year 194 after Hijrah. But he resigned from this position and chose to teach and write kitabs instead. There are two incidents that gives a person an understanding of the passion that Imam Hasan ibn Ziyaad rahimahullah had for the deen. The first is an admission of Imam Hasan himself, wherein he said, "For 40 years I did not sleep, but that I was in front of a candle." What he meant by this was that he would be reading or writing until sleep overpowers him. He wouldn't pack up his things and go to bed lying there waiting for sleep. So he would sleep in front of his kitabs and wake up in front of his kitabs. The second incident sheds extra light on this point, though this is less of an incident and more of a daily occurrence. Imam Hasan ibn Ziyaad rahimahullah used to have an order as to how he would spend his day. He would begin his day after Fajr, teaching and giving fatwa until it was time close to Zawal. Then he would go home and see to his needs. Then he would come out for Dhuhr Salah. Thereafter he would engage in his usual class, and this would continue until Asr. Then he would perform Asr. After Asr he would begin discussing matters of usul. This would continue until Maghrib. After Maghrib he would go home for a short while, but he would return before Isha, during which intricate masail used to be discussed. Then he would perform Isha, and after the Isha Salah he would continue with more matters of deen until a third of the night had passed in this manner. This was the daily routine of Imam Hasan rahimahullah. Not only that, but he went one step further. Imam Hasan rahimahullah had a slave girl that was tasked with reading out deeni things, deeni masail to him while he ate, while he made wudu, and while he did anything else besides teach. This was how Imam Hasan rahimahullah valued every single second of his day and had it utilized to the best of his ability. May Allah grant us the ability to take a lesson from the way that the ulama valued their time and allow us to spend our time in ways that are pleasing to Allah. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.